Hi, my name is Emily and I'm an artist based in the UK. I've grown up in a very creative family, which gave me the freedom to paint and draw for a lot of my kind of childhood time. If I wasn't playing, I was making a mess and probably getting told off for making a mess. I used to look at the walls of my grandmother's house and look at paintings done by her mother. And there was a lovely uh, painting sketch of a yellow iris. And I just thought it was great to see work on the wall done by someone that I kind of knew. And I just knew very early on that I wanted to be an artist, that was it. That was who I was. There was nothing else that came into my head that I wanted to do when I grew up as such. And those paintings, and especially the iris, that really informed my work as a child. I did my own iris uh, flower drawing and colouring pencils. I used to do a lot of colouring pencils, but I used to do mainly drawings of like Formula One cars and footballers. I liked action shots. I didn't really do wildlife occasionally, but I wasn't that interested. That came into my work a lot later. As a family, we didn't have lots of books on art. We had a book on Japanese art, which I thought was beautiful. Just such simple like silhouettes of trees with wildlife in. And that has definitely influenced my wildlife work, which I hadn't really explored as a child. But my main influences in my work have come from painters such as Van Gogh, Francis Bacon, Paul Orego, um, but also like photographers like Cindy Sherman, the storytellers, and the German expressionists. I like paint to look like paint. I like energy. I like thick brushstrokes and just a passion, I guess, in how artists are working. My current work is my most recent artwork is a mixture of my portrait work and my wildlife. I've been combining the two themes now since 2018. It kind of came by chance, really. I'd kept the two kind of themes very separate and realized that actually there are people in my life that I do associate with certain kinds of wildlife, and um, so I thought that would be a really interesting way to kind of explore looking at combining kind of connecting up my artwork as a whole. So my most recent piece is called Those Wasp Nests in Your Head, which is about a fellow artist that I know called Justin Gilday, who casts in silver in such fine detail wildlife. And his work can be quite political as well, and about social issues too. And he's also a pest control by day, I suppose you would say. And I went to an exhibition of his, and there was the most enormous wasp nest I'd ever seen. And it was such a beautiful structure. And from that point, it had kind of made me think about his connection to wasps. And I made him an artwork that was to do with wasps called Paper Palaces. And then that kind of really pushed on this idea, but it took quite a few years until this year to finally kind of work out how I could possibly combine the two and having a title to the work. And luckily he said yes. And we put together, I showed him sketches from my sketchbook, and he sent me photos over, and I was able to then create the artwork, referencing a very kind of subtle, abstract version of some of the patterns that you get in the wasp nests that I'd seen him post online. One of the biggest challenges for an artist is getting your work seen. You know, there are so many artists out there. How can you find new people to see your work? It can be very costly, whether that's renting out a gallery, that's framing your work or presenting it in a smart manner. It's entering open calls. It's the gallery commissions as well. Don't think people, outsiders to that world, really understand actually how much money can go into just seeing one piece of work. If I was to talk to my younger self, I would say believe the gut. Go with your gut, and don't be scared of speaking up if you don't feel something is right. In my early days as a student, I was mainly a painter, but I've always liked to experiment, and some of my earliest drawings and paintings were done with makeup. I would use eyebrow, lip liner, and eyeshadow that came as pencils and blended together. So my artwork would have a bit of a shimmer, but I'd also use foundation, very cheap foundation from the market, bought in the market stall. So it wouldn't be anything I'd really want to wear on my face. And I would blend in blushes and more like the powdered eyeshadows to blend in tones as well. I've used ink on cartridge paper, which I'd rip up and stick together as well. And even now, as my time as a stitcher, although I still call my artworks paintings, I like to stitch into different materials. I like to push how far I can take the stitching, what kind of materials, how much stitching can go onto those. So I like to stitch into wallpaper, plastics, handmade paper as well. Things like packaging, brown paper is really lovely to stitch into as well. I'd like to keep challenging myself. I like to explore the materials that I'm using at that current time, and I like to see certain textures onto different surfaces as well. When I start a new artwork, I normally have a title first, and often my titles come from song lyrics. So when I work on that artwork, particularly if it's a portrait, I like to listen to the song that the lyric has come from, and I will have it on repeat for a couple of hours, because I want to hear the words, but there is a feeling that I've obviously gained from those lyrics. So I want to feel that feeling, get that sense of mood that I want from the artwork. But I like to work to music as well. So after a couple of hours and I feel kind of settled into the artwork, I will switch from listening to that one bit of music over and over to all kinds of different musics, really, music types. It depends on my mood, and also early on, my music taste will probably be more faster, so something a little bit punky, but then it will probably calm down and I'll have some opera and some classical, or just something quite soothing and not necessarily music that is distracting and that I just want to sing along to. It's just something there in the background as a almost like a, yeah, kind of soothing, but some like it removes any other distraction from my surroundings, really. The best reaction I've ever had to my artwork was someone crying, and it was to do with a commission I did for a pair about their daughter who had died, and this sparrow had, around the time of her death, appeared in their garden, and they wanted me to create a piece of work which was to represent their daughter as a sparrow. And the trickiest bit was to get the right pose. I didn't want it to look perky. There had to be something quiet about the bird. And I found this great image where it was mainly looking at the back of the bird, but the head was turned and looking over its shoulder. And to me, that kind of represented that the bird was saying, it's okay, I'm all right, but I'm here. And I kept it very, very simple. It was a white background. And inspired by those Japanese artists I looked at as a child, I had it sitting on a branch and stitched the bird. And it's always nerve-wracking doing a commission because you're never quite sure. You know, it's very different to just making just a normal piece of artwork. And they loved it. Thankfully, they loved it. And yeah, it's very tricky, such a delicate subject, such a personal story to represent. And yeah, I think that was probably the hardest commission that I've ever had to do. So I'm so pleased that it hit the spot. What do I hope people take away from my work? I just hope they take something away from with them. You know, I hope that some people might have been educated in the wildlife work that I do, that I focus more on endangered species, that maybe there was a species they didn't realise was endangered, or they've come across a species that they've never heard of, or it makes them look at how birds move in the sky, or just how the technique that I use maybe kind of widens their eye, that embroidery, even though it's in a very contemporary style, it can be seen as a fine art and not just a craft. I would rather someone have a negative opinion than walk away and think nothing at all. So I hope that my work brings out something in someone, whether that is a positive, which I hope it does, or a negative, than nothing. So next for me, I'm hoping to work on some new portraits, but I have a exhibition in Hive in Kent at the Haven Gallery, which will be for all of November. So I'm at the moment working out what artworks will be coming with me for that show. But you can catch up with everything that I'm doing on my Instagram and my Facebook, which you can find me at Artwork by Emily Tull, or you can go to my website, which is www.emilytull.co.uk.